Today, we're going to use a little something called the elements of art to create ourselves an entire pumpkin patch. We're going to start with a piece of paper and a permanent marker and begin by using lines that enclose, creating a shape. Now, pumpkin shapes are really cool because just like you and I, they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and each one of them is special and amazing, again, just like you and I. The cool thing about a pumpkin shape is you can't mess it up. It's a shape that grows in nature, as pumpkins are actually a fruit that grow outside. I'm pretty sure you knew the outside part, but did you know it was a fruit? Regardless, you'll begin with the pumpkin shape. It's an organic shape, and so is the stem. Organic meaning it's something that can be found in nature. Now, the shapes used on a pumpkin face are traditionally or usually geometric shapes, like triangles, circles, and squares. So begin with an organic pumpkin shape, add your stem, and then think of the different kind of geometric, semicircle, circle, triangle, rectangle shapes that you can use for the face. Your goal today as an artist is to try to fill your page with not only as many organic shaped pumpkins with geometric faces as you can, but also to think about the different expressions you can give to each one of these pumpkins. Now, again, just like you and I, each one of these pumpkins should be unique and different. No two could be alike. So think about squeezing little tiny pumpkins into little tiny spaces and great big silly tooth pumpkins into other spaces. You're the artist. You get to really take creative control with your pumpkin patch. Again, start with that shape and add the face. Now, if you draw a pumpkin that you don't like, I don't want you to draw an X through it or scrabble it out. No, make that pumpkin work. Sometimes a little oops can turn into something completely magnificent. You got to make those messes into masterpieces. And that's just what you'll be doing today in your pumpkin patch. All right, now that I've got just a few in my patch, I think I'm going to go into lightning mode and zip right along and finish my pumpkin patch. And as I'm working, I hope that it inspires you and gives you some ideas. You'll have an idea sheet on your table to help give you some ideas. I know you are so stinking creative that you'll come up with tons on your own, but sometimes I need a little bit of inspiration or some ideas, and that's what that idea sheet is all about. Again, use your permanent marker, fill your page with as many unique and different pumpkins as you can, and have fun. The elements of art that we just used to create our pumpkins were line, shape, texture. We used textured lines to show the texture of the stem. And now let's use color. You're going to use a bunch of art supplies today. Color pencils, markers, and crayons. And when you use a bunch of art supplies to create your masterpiece, it is called mixed media. We're mixing things up here. And as you are adding color, I want you to think about how you can mix and match and use these art supplies. Right now, I'm using colored pencils, and I colored dark around the edges, just like I'm doing right here with my crayon, and I created a dark value by pressing firmly. Now I'm going to color a little bit lighter to create a light value in the center. What that does is give my pumpkin something called form. It makes my pumpkin look three-dimensional. When you use markers, usually you can just color a flat shape. It's not easy to make something have form or value with markers, but you can definitely do it with colored pencils. Another trick you can try is to try blending colors together. I'm blending two color pencils together to get a really beautiful, unique color. Now I know it looks like I'm coloring super duper fast, but I think you can guess I don't actually move this quickly. I just happen to speed things up a bit. I'm working quickly. You, on the other hand, will want to work slowly and carefully. That blending thing that I just did with colored pencils, you can do it with crayons too. As you're adding color, baby, color to your pumpkin patch, think of some different ways that you can use your mixture of art supplies, your mixed media. In fact, why not try mixing them together? Here I'm drawing some lines for texture, another element of art, to my pumpkin. Now I'm going to go over it with marker. Because my crayon has wax in it, it will resist or push off the marker color. So try mixing and matching a little bit. When you're using your markers, I will warn you that you have to let the marker juice dry on your paper before continuing to color in the same spot. If you don't let the marker dry a little bit, and you'll know it's dry by touching the paper and not feeling that it's wet, if you don't let it dry, sometimes it can put a hole in your paper. You'll want to be careful of that because you want to make sure this masterpiece looks as amazing as you can make it. Have fun! Another art supply that you could try are fluorescent oil pastels. Fluorescent means that they're very bright. An oil pastel has two ingredients. It has oil and it has pigment. Pigment's another word for color, baby, color. Why I love oil pastels is because when you use watercolor paint with them, the watercolor paint and the oil pastel, they don't mix. So any designs and lines that you draw, once painted over, can still be seen. So for that reason, since I'll be painting over these pumpkins, you'll just want to use lines and shapes. Don't color your entire pumpkin in. I mean, if you do, it's totally fine, but for what we're about to do, you might want to just stick with adding lines and shapes to create patterns like I'm doing here. All right, now I'm going to bust out the watercolor paint. When you're using watercolor paint, it's important that you wake up the watercolor paint, which is what I'm doing here. To wake up watercolor paint, all you have to do is add water. So I'm doing that by just taking my paintbrush, filling it with water, and shaking it over each color of paint. Now I'm adding a little bit of paint to my pumpkin, and check it out. You can see the oil pastel lines that I drew. The reason is because that oil pastel is resisting the paint. It's pushing it right off. Now, when you're using watercolor paint, it's very important to wash your brush before changing to a different color, baby, color. You'll want to wash your brush and draw a little X on a sponge. I don't have a sponge with me, so I'm simply washing it really well in my cup. As you're painting, sometimes with watercolor paint, you might notice that your brush makes a dry or a scratchy kind of line. And if it does that, it's your paintbrush's way of telling you that it's thirsty. Hey man, I could use some water. So make sure that your paintbrush is always gliding over your pumpkins very easily. Remember, your paintbrush is like a ballerina. She's always on her tippy toes. She never ever scoots around on her bottom because nobody wants to go to the booty scootin' ballet. So make sure of a couple of things: that you always have a paintbrush that is on her tippy toes, and that you never make a scratchy line. And if you do, just know that it's your paintbrush's way of saying that it needs more water and a little bit more paint. Now, you might be thinking, these don't look like regular pumpkins. These are all sorts of crazy colors. Well, guess what? I'm the artist, and I'm using what's called my artistic license, painting it any way I like. I encourage you to do the very same. Now, if you did use fluorescent oil pastels, look what you can do with a little something called black light. What? They appear to glow in the dark. I hope that you have so much fun creating your colorful pumpkin patch.